if your skin is bruised or burnt, let's say, the slightest touch is painful. But normal skin can withstand a lot of pressure, a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the mind. If the mind is wholesome, positive, strong, it can withstand a lot of things. And you have that understanding. But if the mind itself is bruised and ill, then every little thing hurts a lot. I think we need to spend some time on empowering ourselves, on strengthening the mind, on just having an understanding of life. And then you enjoy the ups and downs.
Namaste and welcome to episode 21 of our show on the Bhagavad Gita with Srimati Jaya, renowned teacher of Vedanta and also my mother. I am your host Ajay. Today what we're going to be exploring and discussing with Jayaji is the concept of failure and how the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita can help us deal with failure, accept it, and use it as a stepping stone towards success. Jayaji, in the context of this discussion that we're having now, failure is something that I think no one is ever exempt from, right? Whether you're well off or not well off, whether you're successful or not successful, and at every stage of life, um, I think failure is an inherent part of the journey, right? So there's different kinds of failure we experience. There's in academics, at studies, when I say failure in academics, I don't really mean like failing a subject, but maybe not doing as well as I would have liked to, or anyone would have liked to. Or we face failure in relationships, relationships that begin with the best intentions, but sometimes just don't work out for whatever reasons. We deal with failure at the workplace, at home, and there's many situations, right? So, what does the Bhagavad Gita make of this?
Yes, see, the first thing that the Bhagavad Gita says is it introduces us to the nature of the world. The nature of the world is pairs of opposites.
Correct.
Like joy, sorrow, profit, loss, success, failure is part and parcel of life.
Yeah.
And when you live life, you must figure out a way of dealing with it. Everyone meets with failure. But pain that it gives you, the sorrow that it gives you is a given. Pain is a given. Everyone goes through it. But suffering is a choice. Whether you suffer as a result of it or not is in your hands and how you deal with it. Like if your mind reacts to it, like you feel bad about it, you wallow in that sorrow, then you never recover in a way. You remain there. It's like a lead plate falling, it just remains there. Or what the Bhagavad Gita says is, you should bounce back like a rubber ball to a height higher than where you started. Because you can identify the mistakes that you've made in that particular situation. You can learn from them, you can correct yourself, and as a result of this failure, you actually become a better person, a stronger person, a person more equipped to handle challenges of life. So if you view it like that, then challenges are a blessing, in fact, because you start thinking, you get creative, you look inward, and you actually grow.
Yeah.
But you have to have the right approach to it, the right attitude towards failure, and understand that it is a passing phenomenon.
Yeah.
It never remains forever.
Yeah.
And you can just let it pass and you move on.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing now in the world is that people are getting scarred by failure a lot more, or it seems like that. That failed relationship with a partner sometimes is putting people off relationships entirely, right? If you don't do well at a subject or an entrance exam, then sometimes people are like, maybe I'm not cut out for it. And no, so sometimes they may be right, but I'm saying that um, there is always resistance. There will always be resistance when you're aspiring to something greater, right? So how do we manage uh, that feeling of failure, that feeling of hurt? There's a lot of fear that comes in as a result of failure, as a consequence of experiencing failure. And there is also dealing with regret, right? Sometimes a lot of us are dealing with the sense of regret. Oh, I should have done that, I could have done that.
See, the first thing we must understand, is that, a story from our scriptures is that of Ekalavya, an outstanding story, where he goes to Dronacharya for training. And Dronacharya, for whatever reason, refuses to take him in. This is like not getting admission into IIT, maybe, or a medical college. So of course, he felt bad, but he's not affected. He goes and makes a statue of Dronacharya and practices in front of that statue, and he masters it so much that he actually becomes better than Arjuna, his prime disciple. So these are all examples which show us that you should never allow failure to get to you. Instead, you learn from the failure and you become a better person, you grow. But that requires, number one, the intellect. Number two, a positive approach in life. Because if you're negative, then every little thing gets to you.
Yeah.
And the third thing is we should be a little thick-skinned. What I mean is, nowadays, everyone is living on the edge. Every little thing upsets people.
Yeah.
Every little, let's say, you've invited guests over, one guest doesn't come, and you're down the drain with that. Also, you must take into account other people's preferences, other people's purpose in life, and maybe you don't gel with that. So what? You just move on. So that objectivity must be there.
Mm.
And for that to happen, you must have a higher purpose in life.
Mm.
So this thing of self-obsession then drops. Like you take the vertical view and say, yes, I've been ditched or a relationship has gone wrong. But that is one experience in your whole life's experiences. And perhaps 2 years down the road, you will say, thank God it happened.
Yeah. It often works like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You take the horizontal view.
Mm.
That I am one person who has suffered. There are others who are suffering to a larger degree. So why am I feeling just sorry for myself? And when you understand this, then you kind of bounce back faster.
Yeah, and it also lends some much needed perspective, right? In the larger scheme of things, when you are able to, like you said, have some objectivity and put some distance between the situation and yourself, you're often able to see things with greater clarity, right?
Yes, and you see things in perspective.
Yeah. There's another thing when it comes to dealing with challenges or obstacles or failure, is that there are things that we can change and there are things that we can't, right? And in the context of that, there's one really lovely prayer that I remember that we used to say when we were young, and it goes like this. It says, "Lord, grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference."
Yes.
I think it's such a powerful thought, and it's something that I think sometimes uh, in our daily routines and the humdrum of life, we forget this message, and it's there somewhere in our consciousness. But keeping this message, it really understanding the things that we have control over and can change, things that we don't have control over and we should accept, and then the wisdom to know the
Yes.
difference, right?
Also, there is the thing of don't take life too seriously. Develop a sense of humor,
Yep.
the ability to laugh at simple things. You don't need a comedian to make you laugh. I mean, there are enough instances in our everyday life that are funny. And like, for instance, I remember a time when I went with the family out to lunch to a revolving restaurant. And the revolving restaurant has layers, there is one is slightly higher than the other. I didn't see that. And I was carrying a plate full of food, filled with food. I tripped, fell, and the food went flying. I went all over the place. And everyone came to help me, but I just saw the funny side of it and I started laughing.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part was that your father got so embarrassed by it that he pretended he didn't know me. So, when you see the funny side of life, it becomes much easier to bear with difficulties.
Yeah, true. One of the things that you mentioned, you touched upon, is the sense of fragility that we're seeing in society today, where little things can trigger us or set us off, like a person not replying to my message soon enough, or like you said, a guest that I had invited to a party doesn't show up, and then you know, and sometimes it can throw the entire experience off, right? It can ruin my day, and I think that that with the conveniences that we enjoy now in the modern world more than ever before, um, I think there is a tendency to get irritated, annoyed, upset, disturbed by the littlest of things, right? So how do we prevent that from happening?
See, it's like this. Take an ordinary example from everyday life. If your skin is bruised or burnt, let's say, the slightest touch is painful. But normal skin can withstand a lot of pressure, a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the mind. If the mind is wholesome, positive, strong, it can withstand a lot of things. And you have that understanding. But if the mind itself is bruised and ill, then every little thing hurts a lot. So I think we need to spend some time on empowering ourselves, on strengthening the mind, on just having an understanding of life. And then you enjoy the ups and downs. It's like bhel puri.
Yeah.
Or any Indian food is just full of taste. So there is, in bhel puri particularly, there is the sweet, the sour, the salty, the spicy, all rolled into one. And the most amazing thing is moist and crisp. So the very thought of it makes your mouth water if you're a lover of such food.
Yeah.
Why is it that you like it? Because it is a mix of pairs of opposites. So similarly, if you have the right view to life, the world itself, then the fluctuation and the opposites itself adds to your fun.
Yeah.
Like how do people make money on the stock market? Because of the fluctuations. So you have to have the right attitude to enjoy life, and then you enjoy the ups as well as the downs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important, like you said, being able to uh, be steady and enjoy the fluctuations, right? It's not like you have to suffer the downs. I think at some level, if you understand that the downs are part of the journey, then it becomes a lot simpler.
Yes, like financial problems, let's say. Everything is temporary in life. You understand that.
Yeah.
And then you go through a little bit of trouble. You tighten your belt. You eat simpler food. You stop going out. All of that is fun in the end.
Yeah.
Because you don't get an opportunity otherwise. Now, what happens with affluence is that you just get used to it.
Yeah.
And then you're not prepared for anything less.
Yeah.
So I think we should cultivate this. You may have a luxury car, but once in a while go into a small car. You may, in the past, having a car itself was a luxury.
Yeah.
So we used to take a ride in a BST bus just for the heck of it, even though you had the car.
Yeah.
And then you enjoy that. You enjoy the bus ride. So we've just cocooned ourselves in an area of comfort where we don't understand that it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, and it's really important. What you've touched upon is the value of simplicity in our lives, right? There is I think somewhere we have lost the ability to enjoy the simple things of life. Like even a simple meal. Every meal does not have to be an guac and avocado on toast, right?
Yes.
Or I mean, now pizza is pretty standard, but earlier on in India, it was a delicacy, right? Um, so I think we've gotten immune to the luxuries and the pleasures of life at some level because it's so accessible. Um, and it's important for us to remind ourselves that, or the fact that we have good food to eat, healthy food, wholesome food on the table. I'm just taking an example of food because that's what we've been speaking about. But in the same way, the our parents, our family members, our friends, our health. There's so many things that we tend to take for granted. Our colleagues that we like. It's not easy to find a workplace where you have colleagues that you like. It's
Yes.
so if you are in that situation, wow, you should. I think we should be really grateful for that. So
And the important thing is to have a higher goal. See, food is not the be all and end all of
correct.
life. Comfort, movies, all of this is something you enjoy, but it's not something you depend on.
Yeah.
When you have a higher purpose, like this, I can think of this guy called Chuck Feeney, who was a billionaire, but lived a very, very simple life, had an ordinary car, had lived in an ordinary home. And no one knew how rich he was till he actually donated $8 billion.
Wow.
So, somewhere there must be that accommodation of others in your life's mission, which is not there at all nowadays. It's all about I, me, myself. I want the best. I want to run around in a Mercedes. I want this, that, and the other, the luxuries of life, not understanding that the majority of people can't even afford the basics. So, what am I doing for that? For them?
Yeah, that's really true. In the context of the discussion on failure that we're talking about, there are many times that we tend to over identify or identify with the failure to such an extent that I become the failure. It doesn't become just a passing experience, like you said. It's like, oh no, I'm not a good student anymore, or I am not a good investment analyst anymore, or I'm not a good husband or a wife or a son or a daughter, because of, and we all mess up, right, in the journey of life. So how do we make sure to prevent identifying, like becoming the failure itself?
Again, by understanding,
Yeah.
mostly using the intellect and understanding that yes, you do feel bad, but you must rise above it and move on. And then, so when the intellect is anchored on something higher, like Oliver Goldsmith said, he was talking about a village preacher and his attitude towards people in general. He said, to them, his love, his griefs were given. But all his serious thought had rest in heaven. And that is the most important thing. So if you are invested in something spiritual, something higher, anything. It could be a musician who's dedicated to music. It could be an artist who's dedicated to art. Whatever, something other than you. Then you find that you have the capacity to bear with adversity much better.
Yeah.
And this we lack. So we have to pay the price.
Yeah. And, it's important to see, like, I do a lot of work in football for children, right? And there are many matches that we win and sometimes we lose. But one of the things that, the coaches, our mentors always told us is that sometimes there's a quote that says, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And I think that's how a good way, the best way of treating failure, right?
Yes.
As a stepping stone to success, because who has achieved anything great without failing? It's not possible.
True.
And whether it's in the workplace or even having a great relationship, I mean, I think people see, I think social media has a sense, has a way of making others' lives look better, but they don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes. When I'm not posting happy photos and all of that, what goes on behind the scenes is not seen at all. So
True.
um, it's important. I think that being able to see it as a stepping stone, I think that's a key part of life. And one is the strength and courage. The other thing is to live life with some grace also, right? You're able to take the life's many reverses with grace. It's not like, oh no, you get very down and you get so affected. I think with experienced athletes, at the very top of their game, you see Virat Kohli when he wins or when they lose, or Roger Federer when he won and lost, or Nadal when they won and lost, Djokovic. There's a grace with which they lose also. Now, battle hardened veterans as they were or are now. And I think that's what spirituality gives to us, right? Is ability to live life with courage, strength, and grace. I think that's really so important.
It gives you the inner shock absorbers.
Yeah.
You take a ride in an auto rickshaw and you take a ride in a Mercedes on the same road.
Different
You
experience.
have totally
Yeah.
different experience. So now what happens is the guy in the auto rickshaw blames the potholes. The guy in the Mercedes doesn't even register the potholes. So it's the same thing with us. You blame life, you blame circumstances, you blame the world when you don't have the ability to face life's situations.
Yeah.
But when you have these internal shock absorbers, you don't complain about anything.
Yep. I think we'll now resume our study of the Gita. We're on chapter 3, and we'll begin with the invocation.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So we're now on verse 19 of chapter 3, and I'll read out the translation. So Lord Krishna says, therefore, always perform obligatory actions without attachment. One who acts without attachment attains the supreme.
This is an outstanding summary of his treatise on action, the logic for action, starting with verse 4 and ending with 18.
Okay.
That's why he uses the word tasmat. It's a scientific presentation. It's not just talking in the air. So tasmat, and every word is important here. Asakta satatam, always. What kind of action? Obligatory action. Karyam karma, perform your obligations. How? Not as drudgery. Samachara, what a beautiful word, means act perfectly with all your heart and soul, the best that you can do with every obligatory action. And then he concludes, one who performs obligatory actions achieves the supreme. So, if you take every word, it's important. Now, tasmat, therefore, it's a conclusion. Asakta, detachment is the key. Now, how do you detach? You can't detach from anything. You can only attach to something higher. So, when you have a higher purpose in life, when you have something that excites you, something that invigorates you in the higher, then you get detached from the lower. But you have obligations to perform. Just perform your obligations to the best of your ability, and find fulfillment in that. So you're not looking for appreciation, you're not looking for a prize or an award. You've already got it. And what is that? You've improved spiritually. And always. So you don't drift. You're totally focused. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't enjoy life while you're performing your obligation. In fact, as you perform your obligations, the world rewards you with so many things. you know? Yeah. Like, let's take cricketers. Not now, they're all stars, but in the past, people like uh, Sunil Gavaskar, Kapil Dev, when they went to the World Cup in 1983, there's something that changed their attitude. Many of them went just for a lark on their way to the United States, things like that. And they never expected to win. They had never won a single match. But something changed, and it was Kapil Dev who told a journalist, "We've come here to win." And just that expansion of your mind. And he tells a guy who's had a broken relationship, he says, our personal matters don't matter to anyone. They don't even care. But you go out there and give your best for the country. And that's what they did. So there was no difference in their training, in their coaching, in their physical skills. There was no difference except in their attitude. And it's so touching. There was a little boy with an India flag and he adored Kapil Dev. So when they were sitting in the bus, totally disheartened after two losses, there was this boy who was waving the flag and saying, "Kapil Dev." And it brought tears to the entire team. So this is what matters. So it's not having one more skill or having one more coaching lesson. It's just changing your attitude and purifying it to obligatory duties. It's a beautiful verse. And I think every one of us should remember this, maybe learn it by heart and repeat it every day, every morning, and you'll be well on your way to success.
Amazing, powerful thoughts. In verse 20, Lord Krishna says, he goes on to say, only by action did Janaka and the others reach perfection. You should also act for the well being of the world. In verse 21, Lord Krishna says, people follow whatever a person of excellence does. The world emulates the standard set by such a one.
So now what happens is, from 4 to 19, Krishna has presented the intellectual approach.
Yeah.
But he finds that Arjuna is not moving. It hasn't had an impact.
Yeah.
So he quickly switches tracks and moves to the emotional motivation. And that works. See, it's like this. If you have a guest at home and you offer him coffee, he says, "No, thank you." Or ask him to join you for whatever. He says, "No, thank you." And you say, "I'm having coffee. Will you join me?" Quickly he says yes.
Yeah.
So what is the difference? It's just the emotional approach. So he starts by saying Janaka and others also reached perfection through action. So you also perform action. That Janaka was his role model.
Amazing.
And Arjuna is moved by that. And then the second thing he says is, and he taps on the fact that Arjuna is basically a sacrificial person. So he says, if not for you, at least for the well-being of the world, perform action. Loka Sangraha. It's a very powerful motivator.
That's a lesson for us.
Yes. So this is the first verse. In the second verse, he says something very, very important, and a lesson for all of us. Yad yad acharati shrestha. Whatever the superior person does, tat eva itara janaha. People follow. So whatever the father does, the children follow. Whatever parents do, the children follow. Yeah. Whatever the chairman of a company does, the employees follow. Whatever the prime minister does, people follow. So it's like that. Yeah. Now, Arjuna is a leader, so he boosts him as a leader. He says, Arjuna, you're not an ordinary person, you're a leader. And like this, he goes through 6 different emotional motivations, at the end of which Arjuna is now geared up. So then 25 to 35, he gives him the technique of right action. But still, he requires the 701 verses, 15 more chapters
To
for
actually
him
get
to
going.
really get up and
Yeah.
get going.
Yeah. No, one point about King Janaka, and I'm always, anytime someone talks about King Janaka, is that question. I know it's slightly off topic from what we're discussing, but the question that that King Janaka asked, where he says, "Am I the king dream?" When he woke up after a nightmare, there's that story where he wakes up after a nightmare in a sweat, and he says, "Am I the king dreaming himself to be the beggar, or am I the beggar dreaming himself to be the king?" And it can like really shake. It really shook. The first time I heard that quote, it just shook my world at some level, right? Because it shakes the very foundation of everything that we assume and we build our lives around. And what is in that message for us?
See, very few of us even think like that.
Yeah.
So you've got to be at a fairly high state of objectivity to even accommodate this thought. So, like, say you have a dream and you wake up directly from the dream. If it's something that is strong, the dream, you remember it. And then you say, when I was in the dream, it was so important.
It was so real.
Yeah, so real. And now it's just gone. What if, and that is the question that Janaka asked. What if, because there's no reason to believe the reverse. He says, what if I am really the beggar who's now imagining myself to be the king? So he calls an emergency meeting of his cabinet ministers and asks the question, and they are wondering what's wrong with the king.
He's lost his mind.
And he knows that they don't understand.
Yeah.
So he says, look, I'm giving you 1 week. If you don't come back with the answer, I'm going to drop you guys. So then they go in search and they find this wonderful realized master, Ashtavakra, who also understands these guys have no capacity to understand. So he says, I will appear before the king in court and answer him. And Janaka, after a week, asked the question with the same fervor that he had a week ago. And Ashtavakra says, the answer, plain and simple. You're not the waker, you're not the dreamer, you're not the deep sleeper. In other words, you're not Janaka, you're not the beggar, you're not the deep sleeper. You are yourself. And that began King Janaka's spiritual journey. So, somewhere we have to think from our own experiences. Like when I was in the 10th standard or 12th standard, something happened and that was so heartbreaking for me. Now I laugh over it. What's the difference? You gain a perspective with the passage of time, which then you ask yourself, why can't I have it now? Why do I have to wait for the passage of time? And these are things that are life-changing, transformational. If you get to the bottom of it, every time something happens in life, you ask yourself, am I this or am I that? And it puts you on a pedestal straight away.
Yep. So I think we've come towards the end of today's show with that powerful thought. Are there some key takeaways you would like to leave us with today?
Yes, the first is that failure is not the end of life. It is a phase of learning. Then we looked at how to face failure, how to understand that it's passing, like that poem, even this will pass away. And then we saw verse 19, which is a brilliant summary of the thesis on action by saying, therefore, always perform obligatory duty without attachment. Acting without attachment takes you to the supreme. So, every action that we perform, if we look at how best to perform it, and if it's an obligation, and without attachment, that is the key. What happens is when you put yourself into it, do it wholeheartedly, you tend to get involved. And you say, okay, I must be detached, and you become indifferent. Yeah. So that fine balancing act. And then he moves on to a completely different track of emotional motivation. And he shows a role model of King Janaka. And then he says, you're a leader, whatever you do, others will follow. And the last thing we saw was King Janaka himself, who asked this fantastic question. Am I the king or am I the waker? Am I the king dreaming that I was a beggar, or am I the beggar now dreaming that I'm the king? So that puts things in perspective in life. And we're well on our way to living a life of success, enjoyment, excitement, yet maturity. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
All right, so we are now at the end of today's show. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that it's given you that little bit of inspiration and drive to take on your day, to take on your week, to take on the different challenges that you and all of us are facing in life. And as always, if you've enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe and do share the show, the link with your friends and family who you think may benefit from it. Have a great week as always, and we'll see you soon. Bye.